Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and welcome to another landing tutorial for the Phoenix Airbus A320 family. Now, with the just recently released shocklets, the aircraft's behavior has changed a little bit again, and I want to use this video to give you another oversight over the general landing technique. And most importantly, I want to focus on the aspect of putting the aircraft on that part of the runway where it's really meant to go, and that's the aiming point. So this tutorial is going to be focused on the flying part of things, on the very last stages, and not on achieving the smoothest touchdown possible, as is unfortunately propagated by a lot of people in the flight sim world. So if I see anyone writing butter underneath the video, then I'm pretty sure it was not a good landing in Flight Simulator. Alright, let's go ahead and revise a little bit of the theory over here. So of course we are going to abide the stabilized approach criteria, which means that we are stable on attitude, on the speed, within 1 dot of the localizer and the glide slope, with a constant rate of descent, an appropriate amount of thrust set, the flaps and the landing configuration, and the landing gear down by the time we pass 1,000 feet. In VMC you can lower this gate down to 500 feet, but especially when you are still training and trying to get the most consistent landings, I very much recommend that you start with the stabilized approach gate only at 1,000 feet. Now, from here on, we try to do minimal inputs. Especially the flight director is a very useful tool in the beginning, but you gotta make very careful use of it. For example, over here it commands just a very slight right-hand turn, because we're maybe half a degree off the center line. So, follow the flight director carefully, but precisely. Now, once we get over the runway threshold, we gotta focus on one thing: maintaining your attitude until we reach our flare point, and at the flare point, normally 30 feet over the runway, we are going to increase the pitch just slightly, we're talking about 1 or 2 degrees over here, and fly the aircraft onto the runway. The latter part, flying it down onto the runway, is the part which I want to focus on in this video. Now, many flight simmers hold the aircraft off and try to achieve the smoothest possible landing. We don't do this, okay? Let's go ahead and release ourselves off the active pause over here, and we are going to establish ourselves on a nice final, keep the auto thrust engaged so that we can focus really on flying the aircraft. Now, as you can see, very small corrections, if at all. Right now my hand is completely off the side stick because the Airbus just keeps flying straight, and that's one of the most important lessons of learning to fly an Airbus. The aircraft is a stable platform. You only need to touch the stick if you want to change your trajectory, such as now we need a very slight left-hand input, but as you can see, really only a very slight one. Now, as I mentioned before, the important part here is to put the aircraft right onto the aiming point. Now, this is initially going to result in positive landings for most of you, which is completely okay, as long as there is a visible flare and the rate of descent is somewhat arrested. Now, we are going to focus on actually flying it onto the aiming point, including a slight flare. And that is going to be the focus of today's video. So, at 30 feet we start the flare maneuver. We retard our thrust levers to idle, depending on our speed. If we're a little bit fast, we retard them a little bit earlier. If we're a little bit slow, a little bit later. The retard call-out is only a reminder, and we gotta remember that.
200.
Okay, so
Minimum.
here we're coming in. We're exactly on the glide path. We can see our aiming point right over there, and that is where we want to touch down on.
50,
So,
40, 30,
tiny flare,
20, retard.
and touchdown. You can see I did use a little bit of a forward stick input on the very final stage of the approach, because I really wanted to make sure we touch down where we are supposed to touch down. It might have been a little bit more positive than some of you would normally be happy with, but that is how you put it down. Once you achieve the skills of being able to position the aircraft exactly where you want it on that runway, the next step then is to try and to do that a little bit smoother. But the important thing is that you put it right on the aiming point, and that is the skill that you as the pilot need to have. Alright, so with those basics out of the way, I'm asking you to go ahead and review the video on how to fly traffic patterns in the Airbus. I'm going to link that in the video description below, and use that in order to fly some practice patterns to perfect your landing skills. Remember, you always want to put it down on the aiming point, which is the large one of the markers on the runway, and that is where you want to fly it down on. Don't hold it off in order to achieve a better flare. That's not going to achieve much. Alright, I do hope that you found this video interesting and that you have learned something today. Now go ahead and review my video on how to fly traffic patterns in the A320, and then fly a couple of patterns in order to work on your landing techniques. Again, I don't want to hear anyone say butter. That's not what makes a good landing. Thank you very much for watching. I sure hope that you enjoyed this one. Leave your feedback in the comments below, and as always, if you are up for more, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and see you all again on the next one.